let's move on to another subject now. The Youth Cup. Now, the Youth Cup was the semi-final stage last night. City played West Brom. They won 4-2, and certainly there was a goal by a player I'm really excited about every time I watch him, and I think he's going to be something really, really special. Tommy Doyle, who is the grandson of not only Mike Doyle, which is the obvious conclusion to draw because of the name, but he's also the grandson of Glyn Pardoe, because Glyn Pardoe and Mike Doyle, two City legends of the past, had offspring who married each other and had a kid who is Tommy Doyle. Wow. So talk about pedigree, eh? And he hit a right rasper yesterday.
That's it.
There was also in goal yesterday Louis Molden, and Molden is such an unusual name that you'd be right in assuming that he is Paul Molden's son. Paul Molden, who was a very prolific, particularly in his younger days, goal-scoring striker for City. So there are two players who have absolute pedigree. I also know the father of Taylor Harwood-Bellis. His father is somebody who's been associated with Stockport County through his uncle as well, Steve Bellis, for a long time. So he's a Stockport lad. There are other names in there that are not quite as familiar. Ben Knight scored a couple of goals in last night's game, and Felix Nemecha is probably a player that people have heard the name of. And probably the best known of them all is Eric Garcia, who's a skipper, who we've seen a couple of times in City's first team. Now, did you two, before I ask Harlan, did you two watch the game or?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't watch it. I didn't have time, and just like I don't have time to watch the youth team in general really that much. But I can't say I'm that bothered about it. In truth, to be honest, it doesn't really bother me that much.
I finished work last night, 9 o'clock. So no, the answer is I didn't watch it. Again, I think I've said this about the ladies' football. I just don't. I've got to prioritise stuff, and it's difficult for me to get to these games. So
it wasn't a loaded question. I was just curious to know.
Yeah, it's just, I would love to go and see it, and I will.
Will you go to the final?
I will try and get to the final.
I will try
depending on where it is.
The
finals against the Scousers.
Exactly,
anything
to beat them.
The finals at home. It's against Liverpool. It hasn't been made clear yet whether it's going to be in the Academy Stadium or the main stadium. City have got to the final 3 times in the last 4 years and played Chelsea over in a 2-legged final in all those occasions. The first leg was always at home and City always lost the final, and they were always at the Academy Stadium. So we don't know yet. Last time City won the Youth Cup was in 2008.
I went to that.
I was there then.
Michael Johnson was playing in that game, for example. Daniel Sturridge. And they won that game, and that was in the main stadium.
Yeah.
But it's yet to be announced yet, and it's one leg, by the way. The rules changed this season, so it's a one-leg final against Liverpool. Now, Harlan, I made sure you watched it, didn't I? I said
I was recruited. Ding. Ring the bell.
I don't want to be sitting here talking about it on my own. I went to the game, and I go to a lot of the youth. I'm lucky because I've got the time to go and watch youth and EDS and stuff and follow them. I used to go to all the away stuff as well. There is a limit to everybody's life as to what they can do, but I do see a lot of the youth football. So I have strong opinions on them, but I'd be interested to know, because I know you love to analyse football, Alan, what you've made of. So there's the team sheet in front of us. Yep. What do you want to do? Go through them, or just pick out the ones that you?
I'll go through them and just talk. What I've done is I broke it down, and I'll go through the players, and when I get to a player that I liked watching or that did something effective in the game, I'll talk about the move or.
I might chuck in an opinion with you.
Yeah, definitely. So starting off with one player that really stood out to me was Felix Nemecha. I really like the way that he plays. I think he's very expressive. He seems to me to be a bit of a pivot in that team. The kind of player that people play off, the middleman, someone that people play into and look to receive from. Quite a direct player, someone that's always looking for an outlet to kind of stretch the opposition and create nice fast flowing moves. Like I said, direct football, and the way that this team plays, I think that it's the City way, it's Pep's way. And I can see that whatever we're doing in the first team is filtering right down now into the other teams as well.
He's got an older brother, Lucas, who's gone on loan to Preston. And when Lucas first came in, I actually thought, wow, he looks a real player. He's a centre forward. The fact that he's gone out on loan at Preston shouldn't necessarily mean his time or his hopes are over. But at the moment, have you followed his progress at Preston?
Look, I've watched a bit of him. Yeah, obviously, I've got a radio show at the moment on Bolton FM, and we actually talk about the Championship quite a lot. Obviously, Bolton have played Preston twice this season as well, and we do have to talk about Bolton on the radio show as well. And I try and keep tabs on as many teams as possible. Obviously, the local sides in and around Bolton as well. Preston only being up the road, so I've kept tabs on him as well. Seems like he's having a good season. Probably not playing as much football as he would want, scoring as many goals as he would want, which is what people look at a bit too much in this country, stats, and not necessarily what players do to assist other players and make games better, so to speak. It's all about goals and stats and whether he scored, and if he didn't score, he had a bad game. It's not about that. But yeah, I like him, and he scored a penalty last season in the Carabao Cup. We can't forget that against Leicester. He stepped up when the pressure was on and helped us on to win that trophy last season in theory, because he stepped up and was a man about it and put the ball in the back of the net.
But despite the fact that Lucas is an out and out striker, and that Felix, the younger brother, is built in a similar way, he's a tall, statuesque type of player. He's actually, to my surprise anyway, not a striker. He is a midfield player.
Yeah, he is.
Who floats and actually looks quite languid in the way that he plays. He scored last night, but he looks quite languid, but he's deceptive. And I was talking to a couple of people involved in the setup who feel as if he might end up being like Jadon Sancho going to Germany, because I think he came from there as a youngster. So I wonder if that's the direction he's going to go in. I don't want to go through everybody too detailed, because people might lose interest a little bit, but I'll pick out a couple. Ron McDonald, who's a defensive midfielder.
Ronald McDonald.
Yeah, other fast food outlets are available. But Ron McDonald, who is a defensive midfielder, my mate, who I've been watching games for years with, really likes the fact that he's an old-fashioned tackler, that tackling's a bit gone out of the game. Have you seen that in him? Do you look at that?
Yeah, I like a good old-fashioned challenge. I like something that's physically, and I think that I remember Pep saying 2 years ago, he made that statement that was massively misinterpreted about how he doesn't teach tackling. He doesn't teach players how to tackle it. It should come from within. It should be an internal desire to want to win the ball back and be aggressive and press and harry for the ball back. I like to see even players that are a new breed of player get stuck in and win the ball back early and be a bit physical, and even players that are quite small and quite tiny, if you want to call it that, still getting stuck in, aggressive players. Tevez wasn't huge. Aggressive. Bernardo Silva, one of the most aggressive, tenacious players.
Well, that's interesting, because I know you haven't fully
time.
answered that, but I'm going to divert you slightly another way. Ron McDonald in that team, to me, plays as a defensive midfielder. Eric Garcia plays as a centre-back. A year ago, I was watching Eric Garcia and thinking, he's a bit small to be a centre-back. He's grown a little bit. Well, that's what I'm coming to. But he looks as if he's suddenly grown a little bit. And when I saw him in the summer and pre-season, I thought, blimey, he looks about a foot taller than I remember last season. He did have an injury at one point as well, so perhaps I hadn't seen him for a little while. But he did look as if he'd grown. I wonder whether Eric Garcia eventually moves into central midfield to become a defensive midfielder. So what you've seen so far, Eric Garcia and Ron McDonald, who are perhaps the two prime candidates, are they potentially long-term Fernandinho replacements?
I absolutely love, from what I've seen of Eric Garcia so far, I think he's composed, he's got everything that I think that we're looking to recruit for money, that we're looking to bring in and pay a big dollar for. He just needs nurturing, he just needs looking after, he just needs showing the ropes, and I'm sure that if Pep, with Pep being who Pep is, if Pep can give him the right guidelines and the right idea and the right tactics and whatnot to elicit and take into games, I'm sure that he can step up to the plate. And who's to say that we have to always bring in players? Why can't we be the team that are creating these wonderful players that other people want to buy from us for 40 and 50 million pounds.
Well, Tommy Doyle definitely fits into that category because obviously with his background, he is a lifelong diehard Blue. His attitude is phenomenal. When you watch him in games, he chases everything down. He's as brave as a lion. He's obviously got quality. He can cross the ball. He can shoot from distance, as we saw yesterday. Yeah, he feels like, to me, he's the real deal with the full package.
How old is he?
Well, he's obviously under 18, or I don't know his exact date of birth, but as far as I know, he's been playing for England's under 17s.
17.
So I think he's quite a youngish player. I might be wrong on that, but Tommy Doyle is the one that seems to me to be the one that the club too are sort of putting their feelings on. You know, like Foden has been the blue-eyed boy for the last year or two, has been the product from the youth team, and we've talked about Foden before, and you know that whilst I'm not saying that Foden's no good or not going to make it, far from it, and I'm desperate for Phil Foden to fulfil all the potential that everybody hopes he has. However, I look at Tommy Doyle and think, actually, if I was putting my colours on somebody, even though he's a bit younger, I'd put it on Tommy Doyle. What do you think?
You think he'll be the one that'll
surpass
Foden? Maybe?
Absolutely, because Foden's got a great attitude, and obviously he's a Blue, so you can see that in the way he plays as well. But Tommy Doyle's brave. Yeah, allying that bravery makes a big difference.
That comes from his granddad, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course it.
I think
Granddad's.
Yeah.
I think on that point, Ian, in a sense, I think if that's the case and that's the feeling of other people as well, and that's maybe what the club are thinking as well.
When you watched him last night, what did you think?
I like Tommy Doyle. I think he's a really good player. I think his strike was fantastic. It was a ball from the left-hand side that was played into him. He took it first time. It was actually Benabe that played the ball into him as well, who I thought had a really good game.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about him.
He's a good little player. He really is. And
is he any relation?
No, well different.
I was looking at him.
He got the ball.
My money's on him.
Tommy Doyle, and how many times do you see a player kind of rush the strike or miscontrol the ball and the move breaks down? The control was fantastic. He knocked out of his feet. He picked his spot. He put it in the bottom corner, and like you say, he chases everything down. He looks very direct. He looks driven. He looks hard working, and I completely agree with you. He looks like he plays a bit like Foden. He's not massive, but he's like I say, he's very attacking, very fluid, very driven and very direct. And I just like the intensity that he brings to the game, so to speak.
Well, it's an exciting game in prospect. Benabe, the player you were talking about, Harwood Bellis is another exciting player.
Frimpong as well was a player that he was my standout performer, to be honest, in that game last night, or one of them, for the pure fact that he reminds me very much of even though he doesn't play in that position, he looked like a Mika Richards or a Mendy that I saw at Monaco, someone that's not afraid to overlap, somebody that's got bags full of pace. He looked like he was never going to tire, like he'd had a full packet of Lucozade sweets before he started the game, and he was just never going to run out of energy, or he drank a full bottle of petrol before he kicked off. Constantly an option for players. His link-up play.
I've done that and it doesn't make it one.
I drank it in the garage.
I have actually done it for real and it doesn't make you want to run round.
Specifically, I want to talk about the first goal because I can mention all 5 players. The ball starts centre half with Garcia. He plays the ball into the middle of the park to Felix Nemecha. He sprays the ball out wide to Benabe. To Frimpong. He lays it down the left-hand side, left-hand channel to Benabe. He whips the ball in, and your man Ben Knight puts it in the bottom corner. It was a 5-pass move from the back of the pitch to the front of the pitch, and within 5 passes we'd scored a goal, and it was exactly the way that the first team aimed to play as well.
He is actually turning into Gary Neville, isn't he?
He's better than Gary Neville. Listen, what I would urge you to do, if you can, and I know not everybody can do this, but if you can get down to the game when it's the final, if you can't, make sure you watch it on TV somewhere, and watch this youth team. And there's a video version of this that we're putting on my YouTube account. And if you want to comment on that, if you've got a different view on one of the players that we're talking about, or you think we should have talked more about Ben Knight or something like that, or the substitutes that came on, Henry Gumby, for example, I thought played very well when he came on. Taylor Richards didn't even come on. There are all sorts of different players. We haven't mentioned Poveda, who is a very exciting young player who's now joined the first team. So if you want to comment on that and get into a dialogue with us, either on Twitter, you can follow us all on Twitter, you can interact with us, or you want to put the comments on the video, please do. And thanks very much for watching and contributing. So that's the youth team. We'll do a bit.